Rocky Top Insider presents the RTI Rim Runner with Bob Baskerville and Ryan Shumpert.
Welcome. It's time for another edition of the RTI Rim Runner, Rocky Top Insider's weekly show that kind of dives a little deeper into the college basketball game, not just with the Vols, but what else is going on around the SEC and the country. Fun show because we are getting right into the heart of the non-conference season, heading into the holidays. So there's going to be some fantastic games going on, and we are there for it. I'm Bob Baskerville, joined as always by Ryan Shumpert. We appreciate you spending time with us. If you're watching us, you're seeing us on the Rocky Top Insider YouTube channel. Make sure you like and subscribe if you haven't done it already. Maybe you want to listen to us as a podcast later, and that's awesome as well. We are pretty much findable wherever you listen to your podcast, so make sure you download it as well. So let's get to it. Got a lot to talk about. Ryan, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. I feel like we're halfway to where I want to be in the college basketball season. We're getting a lot of good games nationally. We need some better competition for the Vols, but hey, 60% of the way through the first 5 bye games to begin the season. So doing well.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, we got a good show on tap for you today. So many games to talk about with a bunch of ranked versus ranked matchups that have been happening this week. And the freshman phenom list continues to grow. We had certainly heard about a lot of freshmen. Now we're starting to see some of the ones that weren't named: DeBonza, Boozer, Ament, etc. We're seeing some other ones emerge. So there's a lot to talk about today. But first, our opening tip. Let's talk a little bit about Tennessee basketball. The Vols clean up their act, and they look better in their past 2 wins over 2 directional schools. The first one was this past Saturday, Tennessee against Northern Kentucky. And in short, the Vols looked much more together. They blasted the Norse 95-56. Tennessee shoots 52% from the field, but also 41% from 3. As you would expect them to do in these games because of their size this year, they dominated the glass, pretty much doubled up Northern Kentucky in rebounds, offensive rebounds, points in the paint, you name it. More importantly, though, Ryan, what I saw that I was happy to see was a 2-to-1 assist-to-turnover ratio, which was a heck of a lot better than what we saw against Mercer in that opener.
No doubt, and I think that continues to be, maybe the most worrisome thing from what we've seen from Tennessee early in the season is just the turnovers that have been streaky, I guess you would say, because even in Northern Kentucky game, Tennessee comes out sloppy. I think turns it over 4 times in the first couple minutes. Doesn't turn the ball over again the rest of the first half, and then was a little bit streaky there in the second half. So much better against the Norse than it was against Mercer to open the season, and a little bit in the middle last night against North Florida. But that's kind of where I think if you're gonna, to me, if there's something that's been real worrisome about Tennessee, it's the fact that they have been a little sloppy with the basketball and just an area to clean up. So improvement and better against Northern Kentucky, but kind of an area that I'll be watching in these last 2 bye games before the Vols head to Vegas.
Let's dissect some of the individual performances because, there's been 2 since we did our last podcast. And the one I want to start with is Nate Ament, because I feel like on Saturday, for my money, and again, very early, and Nate is wildly skilled, so let's not read anything into we have concerns about Nate Ament. That's not the case at all. I felt like maybe that was the best I had seen him play, including the exhibition against Duke. 23 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists. Felt pretty complete, but you were there covering the game. I'd love to get your take on him too.
Yeah, I did it on a season low 24 minutes too. So he was just much, he's as efficient, it felt like, as he's been this season. And the thing that I guess we saw a little bit against Duke, we really didn't see against Mercer, and has been apparent the last 2 games, is the assist numbers, getting guys involved. I think he had 4 assists in the first half last night, and had 5 assists in both those games. So making the right plays and he especially teams like this. I think it's everybody is going to be a matchup issue, but when he can kind of get downhill, get to the basket, he's just going to get fouled a lot. I know entering last night, he had attempted 50% of Tennessee's free throws on the season. It's went down last night. I think it's in the 40% range, but that's going to be a continued stat that's worth watching this season because he's going to get to the line at a really high rate, and I think that's a positive. On nights when shots aren't going to be falling for him, that he has a way to. Certainly has a lot of ways to affect the game, but with the rebounding and what he can do on defensive end too. But it can even affect the game as a scorer when his shot's not falling.
Yeah, and I know you and I have talked about this, but I really am struck by he's kind of when we've talked about him in the past about being a three, and sometimes in the offseason, Barnes even said, "Who knows? You might even see him at the two occasionally." In my head, I immediately deduced, well, not many rebounds, but I think he's been a really productive rebounder, and that's been for me a bit of a pleasant surprise. But maybe it's something that we shouldn't have worried about from the beginning anyway.
Yeah, it's definitely been more than I expected. I mean, I think he's 9, 9, and 8 rebounds, I want to say, in the 3 games, or maybe 9, 8, and 8. So he is flirted with a double-double in every game. I think he will flirt with a triple-double at some point this season, if not just flat out get one, because of his ability to affect the game as a passer. But no, he's been good there, and I mean, I think before the season, kind of to your point, like Nate playing the 3 was one of the reasons that I'd point to of thinking this team was going to be a really good rebounding team, but I didn't know exactly what that would look like from a number standpoint. And certainly he's playing a lot more minutes than anybody else in Tennessee's front court just because of the depth Tennessee has at the 4 and 5 spot. But it seems like he's going to be right up there near the top for Tennessee's rebounding leaders all season.
Yeah. Jacoby Gillespie had a nice game, 20 points, 3 rebounds, 4 assists. I want to get to, and there's going to be kind of a through line in this show today. We'll talk about this guy more than just in this game, but really promising 20-minute performance on Saturday from JP Estrella. 17 points, 11 rebounds. Again, spoiler alert, we'll be talking about JP again in a couple of minutes. But man, for a guy who, I know, again, you and I have talked about this, a guy that had so much hype surrounding him, I still felt going into the season a little uncertain about the guy, but I don't think I'm that uncertain anymore. This guy is another weapon, I think, for the Vols.
No doubt. I mean, it's fully gotten to let's just see it. Let's see what he can do against top level competition,
Right.
which isn't a knock. Like, that's a credit to JP that he's been so good in the first 3 games that it's like, oh, there's not really a whole lot else we need to see against the Rices or the TSUs of the world. Obviously, you want to see consistency from him, but it just feels like when he's matched up with guys that are smaller than him inside, like he's just gets to his spots really well and finishes, has great touch around the rim, which we knew, but he's doing that at an incredible rate. And just the efficiency of it has been super, super impressive. I'm trying to find it right now. He's taken 35 shots this year and has scored 52 points. Like, that's North Florida's coach said it last night. Like, he said he's a guy that is your dream to coach because he's very, very efficient on not needing the ball a ton, and you can almost lose track of him out at times because he hasn't played just an overwhelming amount of minutes. And it's not like the offense is just running through him every single possession that he's in the game. But he's been extremely, extremely productive, and also on the offense rebounding rate. I mean, I think that's the thing I would say to this point has surprised me the most is how good of a rebounder he's been, especially on the offensive end. I think it's a 34.1% offensive rebound rate, which is tops individually in the country. And certainly to that point, he's creating a lot of opportunities for himself to score, even when he's not getting the ball in the post through Tennessee's offense.
Yeah. This may not be a fair comparison, but for some reason, and we'd be so lucky if he stayed around as long, but I'm kind of getting some Drew Timme vibes with him a little bit. You know what I mean? Just a guy who could, again, efficient, not necessarily this freaky athlete or anything, but just a really, efficient and solid and strong offensive player.
Yeah, no, I could 100% see that. I'm pulling up his KenPom page right now. Curious to see if that's one of the comps they have for him, but based on his numbers, and it's not. But I could see it, and I'd want to go look and see what Drew Timme is like perimeter shooting numbers are, because I just from a brief recollection, I feel like, and I don't know if we see that this year, but by next year, I could think we could see JP, a guy that hits 35 threes in a season and, shoots at a 35% clip.
Yeah. I don't think Timmy did much, on the perimeter, so that's a good point. We got to talk about this guy because he did not play in the second game that we're going to be covering, but I've got to, again, raise my hand. I was skeptical of him, but I'm coming around because we saw another nice performance on Saturday, 22 minutes from Bishop Boswell. 6 points, 5 assists, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, had 2 threes, another positive plus-minus score, and we know what he does impacting the game defensively, which is why Rick is partial to him. I guess we got to get right with expecting maybe, like an 18, 20-minute night from Bishop usually. But from what I'm seeing, that doesn't bother me as much as I thought it would.
For sure. I think it's kind of like finding a middle ground, because I don't think he's going to make 2 3-pointers every game he plays or anything like that. But just being any sort of threat on the offensive end, I think goes a long way. And again, he's a guy that has been really good rebounding and has made a big impact there too. So because I think going into for me, it was like, all right, he's good perimeter defender, but he's not Jamai. And I was skeptical of what he could do offensively. So it's, how else, at least scoring offensively, how else can he affect the game besides just being a good defender? And he showed ways to do that. But it's going to be interesting, that 2-guard spot, which I'm sure we'll get to more of that conversation here when we talk about North Florida.
Yeah. And the last one to put a bow on Northern Kentucky, speaking of 2 guards, was Ethan Berg, who I thought was pretty clean on Saturday. 8 points, 3 assists, couple threes, 16 minutes. But it does feel like it's almost like that 2-guard spot to some degree is kind of, I don't want to call it like a casting call, like an open audition, but it still feels like Rick's still figuring out where, how he wants that to flow through that spot.
Yeah, I think certainly he would like some separation, and there just hasn't been a ton. You probably could argue more than anybody that Bishop had separated himself, but it's just 2 games. Not that it's supposed to be a long-term injury. I would expect him to play against Rice with the right foot that kind of got rolled up on in that Northern Kentucky game, but it's going to be interesting because, again, like I said, there's just not a ton of separation right now, and not a ton of consistency from that group as a whole, even though, again, sample size is pretty small.
Yeah. Well, that's a good segue into the next game that was played on Wednesday night. The North Florida Ospreys come into town. I saw it on RockyTopInsider.com, and I've heard other people talk about it. Everybody's calling it the Chaz Lanier game. It would have been nice if Chaz could have been there, but alas, the Pistons were playing last night.
Yeah, he needed, and we'll talk about the game later. I don't know if you saw the Donovan Mitchell. He needed his schedule where he was sitting there courtside. It looked like he had a cameraman too.
Donovan got a lot of play in that game. It was weird. It was weird, but we will get to that momentarily. As far as this game against North Florida, though, it was kind of a choppy start at the beginning, and I think somewhere along the line, whether Rick got into them or the guys just kind of woke up, they turned on the heat late in the second half. They rout North Florida 99-66. But this game, Ryan, it was neck and neck for about the first, 13, 14 minutes. But then Tennessee goes on a run, creates some distance. And after that, it felt like it all was downhill for the Vols in a positive way.
No doubt. I think it was the under 8 timeout was pretty late, maybe 6 minutes or so left, and Tennessee was up by 2. Now, Nademan was shooting 3 free throws coming out of it, but it felt, I don't know what Rick Barnes said during that timeout, but it just felt like a different level of intensity on the defensive end. I think Tennessee forced 3 straight turnovers out of the timeout, turned them all into points, and then went on a 15-0 run to end the half. And again, obviously Tennessee was massive favorites against North Florida, but they ended up getting it to 17 points at halftime in a first half that they played pretty poorly for most of it. And to me, I thought it was the defensive stuff. I thought just not locked in enough on defense, some bad defensive rebounding in that stretch was, and look, North Florida made shots too, but I think 6 or 7 threes in those first 13 minutes, but they were also shooting a ton of threes, so it wasn't like it was just an unbelievable efficiency either. So the offense was really, really sloppy the first we'll call it 3 or 4 minutes of the game. But that next, we'll say 8-9 minutes of the game when Tennessee did not play very well, I thought it was more about the defense than it was the offense.
Yeah, and that's getting under Rick's collar if that's
Yeah.
happening when it's about the defense. Um, again, no surprise here. Tennessee's been doing it. They did it in the Mercer game, and I expect them to do it in these other upcoming bye games, is leverage their size. Again, huge advantage on the glass, 52-24 to be precise, and almost, essentially doubled up North Florida on the offensive glass. That led to a 27-13 edge in second chance points, 54-28 edge in points in the paint. And all of this while the boys were shooting as a unit, because there was so much going on inside, 52% from the field, but also they did hit some threes. The one thing I wanted to mention too was 8 blocks as a team, which that was a nice number to see. And Felix Akpar and Cade Phillips led the way there. What was your take on all of that? I mean, because also I didn't, like you said, not a super clean game, but still had 26 assists on 37 field goals. So what I was seeing when I watched was ball movement was good. It got better. It was a little choppy at the beginning.
No, for sure. And to the blocks note first, I felt like I saw Tennessee block more jump shots in the first half than I've ever seen a team block jump shots in a game. But no, offensively, I don't think like the turnover issues, it's not as much. It's, I think, over dribbling leading to bad passes at times, but it feels like it's been more, the Ethan Bird turnovers early in the game where he drives into the paint, leaves his feet, and just doesn't know what he's going to do with the ball. So it's not as simple as, Tennessee is just getting super, super dribble happy and defenses are collapsing, or when Gillespie or Ament drives, the help defense is there to strip them. I mean, that's happening some. But it feels like more of the issues have been on bad passes, and certainly static offensive movement has led to some of that and having to force some things. But it isn't to say that it's Tennessee has not had good ball movement and hasn't shared the ball well, because I don't think that's necessarily true.
Yeah. Individually, I mean, again, we could lead every one of these shows recapping Tennessee, Ryan, talking about Jacoby Gillespie and Nate Ament. They both combined for their kind of 40-ish point total. Jacoby had 21 and 7 assists. Nate, 19 points, 9 boards, 5 assists. Like you said, you're right. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a triple-double for him or getting close to one sometime this year. But let's get back to a guy we talked about a little earlier, and also some other guys that we did not talk about earlier, but we'll start again. JP Estrella, man, just fantastic in this game. And, it stands to reason. I recognize it is against North Florida. And like you said, Ryan, we're getting to that phase of, okay, show me against the big boys. But very, very encouraging stuff we're seeing from JP.
No doubt. And again, he just is doing it in not a ton of minutes, 20 minutes against North Florida to score 23 points. And it just feels like it's, Tennessee started slow in a lot of really all 3 of these games to some extent. It started slow, and it feels like all 3 games JP has kind of come in and given them a spark on the offensive end right away. So he's been fantastic. And, the rebounding, 6 of them on the offensive end last night has been huge. So it does, the question was who would emerge as a third guy to Jacoby and Nate on this team offensively. And I think everybody thought that the best scenario was for that to be JP, just because he had by far the highest ceiling. And, early on, he doesn't even appear like he's going to be, a third fiddle. He's right up there with Nate and Jacoby and what he can give this team offensively.
Yeah, I think you're right. I wanted to get your take too on some other guys that showed out on the Wednesday night game. And one that emerged that I felt I was starting to worry about going into last night's game, but we saw a player who stepped up last night, and I think that bodes well for, again, as we're trying to figure out the conundrum of the 2-guard situation. But talk about some of these other guys who I thought delivered really strong performances, maybe not a ton of points, but a lot of other intangibles.
Well, just to start in the backcourt at the 2-guard spot, I thought from a rotational standpoint, Ethan Bird gets to start with Bishop. Boswell out, and he certainly did not run with his opportunity. 2 quick turnovers, played 4 minutes in the first half. Felt like Rick Barnes was sending him a little bit of a message due to some of those miscues. And then Troy Henderson was the first 2-guard off the bench ahead of Amari Abram, and Troy was fine last night. Hit a 3-pointer, grabbed some rebounds, had a couple assists. Very solid, but certainly nothing special performance. And to I think what you were referencing is Amari Abram, who played by far his best game. And it felt like it started on the defense end for him. He had 3 steals last night and just 13 minutes, and then offensively 9 points, which is by far the most he scored this year. Hit a 3-pointer, had a couple assists. He was a big part, I thought, of that. We were talking about that run earlier out of the under 8 timeout where Tennessee started opening up the game. He was a big piece of that. I think had a steal and threw it an alley-oop to Cade Phillips on one of those possessions. So, it's good to see him insert himself, show some life. But certainly it makes the whole conversation and the whole rotation, all the more foggy at that 2-guard spot.
Yeah, real catalyst. I mean, also, and this one happened right in front of me in the first half. I believe it was first half. Maybe it was later. Whatever the case, he was really the catalyst on a 10-second backcourt violation too, where
Yep.
I think they weren't expecting Tennessee to press as much, and Abrams again was right in front of where the area I sit in, and I mean he was all over his man. I mean that dude, again, the energy level that he brought last night, I thought was really exciting to see. I wanted to get your thoughts, and here was the other thing when you talked about Ethan Berg, and I agree with you. I think Rick probably was trying to send a message to him by getting him over to the sidelines pretty early in the game. There's two. When I watch Ethan Berg and when I watch Troy Henderson at this point, I think they're markedly different. Berg, I think, is very skilled, but it's that whole slow your motor down just a touch, right? It just feels like it's almost like he is so he's so ready to get into the game. He wants to do it all at once, and it doesn't work that way. Whereas Troy, to me, so far, I don't think it's like a marked. Like there's not a huge gap between them in terms of pecking order, but Troy seems just a lot more calm and smooth out there.
No doubt, and I think some of that is like Berg's being asked to handle the ball more, where to me it feels like Troy is kind of in just a lot of catch and shoot situations, move the basketball. He's not driving and facilitating a ton right now, but no, I agree. I mean, Troy Henderson just seems he's playing very, very confidently, which I think to me is what stands out about him and Dwayne Brown is true freshmen and guys that were not big time. I mean, I guess Dwayne Brown was a 4-star and chose Tennessee over some SEC teams, but 2 guys that I don't think anyone expected to come in and make massive impacts right away, and they seem. And obviously, it's easier competition. We'll see what it looks like when Tennessee plays better teams, but they seem very self-confident and assured of themselves right now.
Yeah. Back to the bigs for a second. I felt Cade Phillips played about as Cade Phillips a game as you're going to find.
Yeah.
I mean that in the best way, right? 9 points, 9 boards, 2 blocks, just efficient, man. That guy's just, and he's everywhere, it feels like.
Yeah, he is. And, he just is just so solid, being able to be versatile on the defensive end and give Tennessee a bunch of production. And I said it to Mike Wilson last night sitting here watching the game. It's it's just 3 games, and it's not like his numbers are really that crazy, but to me he's been really good in all 3 games. I think he's been about as consistent as any player that Tennessee's had. He hasn't shot the ball a ton, which you wouldn't expect, but I do think he showed a little bit of growth on kind of those contested, almost driving. He's not necessarily driving to the basket, but it's not an Olivier Camois 5 to 10 foot fadeaway. He's kind of going up into the defense. He's to me, he's been good there on top of obviously just catching a lot of alley-oops and getting some putback dunks.
Yeah. I had a friend reach out to me last night who's a big Vols fan, and he was obviously a little intoxicated by the not intoxicated, but I use that term slang measures for the JP Estrella performance had him feeling himself, where he was like, when do we start having the conversation about JP starting at the 5 over Felix? And it's like, man, those are totally different players. I mean, I could see JP maybe starting over Cade at the 4, but I mean, Felix didn't do much offensively last night, but the 3 blocks and I mean, just how he impacts the game defensively that's his value, right?
No doubt, and I think it's kind of when you talk about starting, it's kind of the same thing as Bishop a little bit. Like Rick's gonna just go with some guys out there
Yeah.
that he trusts more defensively, and Felix, I think, can make a lot of those fix-it plays Tennessee talks about, which Tennessee continues to not be at the level defensively, especially on the perimeter that they've been the last couple of years. No shock there, given the guys that they've lost both last year and really the last 2 teams. So, 4 spot for JP continues to be the one that's my most curious question right now. Can JP be good enough defensively against these teams that play more stretch fours? Can he play out on the perimeter defensively
Yeah.
and be solid there? Like, because to me, when you talk about highest ceiling lineups for Tennessee, I mean, it's got to be Jacoby, some version of the 2 guard spot. Choose who's having a good game. Nate, JP, and Felix, because of just what that unit can do offensively while still having Felix anchoring things defensively and, being kind of a lob threat that JP, it's not that he's not, but isn't quite as much of one. So to me, that's the big question is how much JP comes along defensively, guarding guys out on the perimeter.
Yeah. Well, staying on kind of that topic, the big thing that I wanted to talk about today, besides just recapping the game, is talk about these rotations because we've said it a couple of times. The teams draw closer to meaningful games. I want to get your take. How are we feeling about the division of minutes with this Vol team? I mean, who appears to be rising? I know it's early. It's probably fluid. But one guy I keep watching, and maybe we just need to brace ourselves for it's going to be that kind of season with Jalen Carey. We didn't even talk about him, but he only played 9 minutes last night. Didn't come in until late in the first half, rather. But still a guy that has upside too. But it's going to be how all these guys perform to Rick's standards, which we know is it's pretty high.
No doubt, and Rick was, he played 2 minutes in the first half. He did pick up 2 quick fouls, and Rick was asked about not going to him until late in the first and second half behind Dwayne Brown, so the 5th big man in the game in both instances, and Rick was, pretty short about it. He said it's just based off what we're seeing in practice that they need more from Carey, and I will, to Carey's credit, I thought he played really well in the second half when he got in. Yeah, I'll continue to bang on the drum of rebounding. It needs to be how he helps his team. He has the potential to be an elite rebounder. So it's just going to be interesting to see. I mean, I continue to think most games, once they get into the thick of SEC play, they're going to mostly play 4 big men. Maybe a 5th gets some minutes. And to me, it's hard not to feel like Brown's maybe a little bit ahead of Carey right now. And then, going into backcourt, I would have said Abram was that last guy entering last night. There's obviously his role off the bench indicated, but he showed a flash, and it feels like somebody will end up getting largely cut out of the minutes usage and at that 2 guard spot. And again, it's not been a ton of separation yet, so not sure who that will be.
Yeah, I remember a time in the summer where I ran into Coach Barnes and we were talking, and it was off the heels of getting Jalen Carey on the squad, and I just told him, man, I'm a big fan of him based on what I saw in the Vanderbilt Tennessee games last season, where he was just a total nuisance to us. He was, kicking our butts. But one of the things that Rick said, and it stuck with me, was he said that guy could be the most important addition to the team, which I was like, if you imagine, Jacoby Gillespie, Nate Ament.
Yeah.
But Rick's looking at it from a different position. And that was a while back. Again, that was almost 6 months ago. But those were the kind of the expectations he had for Jalen, though. And so that's part of it. I think the bar's set so high, and Jalen should be up to it. But yeah, it's probably going to have to improve. I originally thought he'd be a starter for sure. But to your point, he might just be battling for that, to be in that 4-man big rotation.
It's kind of the opposite of Cade, where it's what we just said. Like, you just feel like what Cade's going to give them right now on a night in, night out basis, and he feels very, very reliable. Carey doesn't necessarily feel that way. It feels a little bit more up and down with him right now.
Yeah. Oh, well, we'll see. Rice comes into town next week, and that will be presumably a slightly bigger opponent than what we've seen with Mercer in North Florida. But Got a few more of those games before it gets into the real thick of things. And man, I got to tell you, when you go around college basketball, I did want to ask you this question because it feels like, as a sport, we are so back, right? Some really great matchups. Tennessee is not in that mix at the moment, but they will be. But we noticed Tennessee dropped in the AP poll, even though they were winning their games. And they also, today, Lenardi dropped his latest early bracketology projections. He dropped them to a 4 seed there. Do you think that's just simply because they haven't gotten into any sort of marquee matchups to show much yet? Is that simply the reason?
Yeah, I think largely so. I mean, with the AP poll, you always just kind of look at what was done around you, and a couple North Carolina and Michigan State, two teams that were pretty close behind Tennessee, get big wins, and
Right.
um, I can't remember who it was. Tennessee did jump somebody, so I think with AP poll, that's it. With Lenardi, I think that's probably a big part of it. Like you're saying, Tennessee not having played a marquee matchup, Tennessee it's like very slightly dropped in some analytical rankings over the first week and a half of the season. So that probably plays a little bit of a role too.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about the matchups around the country, widen the lens a little bit, because they're beginning to get serious. It started last Saturday. Alabama rolls into MSG and takes down number 5 St. John's. I got to watch the highlights of that game. I didn't get to see it live, but it's just that reminder of when Alabama is on and it's rolling, it's pretty tough. So in Alabama, as a result, just what we were talking about in the polls, I don't have it in front of me, but I believe they jumped like 7 or 8 spots up in the polls with that win. Michigan State, another team you mentioned, held off another SEC team, Arkansas. And then just in the last couple of nights, we had multiple ranked versus ranked matchups, multiple teams in action, by the way, that are going to be on our schedule here soon enough. And the one that is the headliner, because both of these teams will be facing the Vols here eventually. Number 12, Louisville, taking down number 9, Kentucky, 96-88. My biggest takeaway in this one, I had 2 maybe. Absolutely no defense played by either team. It was fun, though. It was a fun game to watch. And then Michael Brown, the point guard at Louisville, that dude is we'd heard about him, but I had not really seen him in action. And man, that kid was special that night.
Yeah, another one of these freshmen that's been really, really good. And I couldn't help thinking back to our conversation on the show last week. I couldn't, and it was his first game back, but I couldn't help but thinking Kentucky probably could have gotten a guy like Michael Brown for a good bit less pricey than Jalen Lowe, who again it was early, but kind of inefficient. Like I thought like he'd showed at Pittsburgh. I think maybe like 2 of 8 from the field, a couple turnovers, couple assists. Again, he wasn't terrible by any means, but again, for a roster that Kentucky's trying to put together a national championship winning roster, spending like it's just kind of I always thought an underwhelming point guard addition. So I think one of the biggest takeaways from the games the last couple of days or over the last week is just, to me, Alabama and Louisville, two best backcourts I've seen. It's just extremely, extremely dangerous. I mean, Latrell Wrightsell for Bama, coming off the Achilles, he looked so good. And he's been a guy that's been hurt largely the last 2 years a ton, and it feels like you're continually hearing at least Alabama people talk about what a big difference he'd make if Alabama could get him back. I mean, that's the guy. I don't know if many Tennessee fans will remember this, but that was Nate Oates' infamous quote about if he was healthy, they would have won the SEC 2 years ago when Tennessee won with Dalton Connect. But he was great. Phylon, he's taken that step that it felt like he would as a sophomore, and a guy in a previous age that probably would have been a one and done. And then Aiden Holloway probably is as good as a 3-point shooter in the SEC as you'll find. And then, it really goes 4 deep with Louisville. Conwell's, looks like the guy that we saw at Xavier in Indiana State. You mentioned Brown. I thought just incredibly impressive for a first big-time game. And then Isaac McNeely, you saw him knock down 3 3-pointers. The Adrian Woolley kid, who, funny enough, I think everybody, because he's from maybe Birmingham, everybody thought he would go to Alabama when he entered the portal. And he'd probably be coming off the bench either place you win. He ends up at Louisville, and his athleticism, and he had a nice game as well. So again, it's early, and I haven't watched everybody, but from who all I've watched in the country right now, those are by far the best backcourts.
I actually feel more concerned after watching that game about when Tennessee plays Louisville than playing Kentucky, honestly. I mean, Kentucky's got guys, obviously, but I just think that Louisville just impressed the hell out of me.
Yeah, and the way Louisville runs their offense with the way they can stretch the floor, like back to the JP conversation, like that just does not feel like a game JP at the 4 spot would be able to survive defensively right now. And here's I'm glad you say that. Here's a take. I think between that game, the Illinois game, which we'll get to, and I don't really think it'll be the Houston game, so we'll say like whoever Tennessee plays in their third game in Vegas could be like a Kansas. Um, I think in one of those games, Tennessee's defense is going to get absolutely torched. Like Rick Barnes just livid, giving up 85 plus points, like something that we just haven't seen from Tennessee the last 5 years. I think something like that's going to happen. Tennessee just has not been super crisp defensively, and I think one of those teams is fully capable of giving Tennessee kind of a wake up call.
Well, for sure, you're right. Louisville and Illinois, I think before their game against Texas Tech, which we will get to in a minute, they were averaging 100 plus points a game. Both those teams were. So, yeah, they can score points. And, yeah, you're right. They might not get 100 on Tennessee, but they can be in the 90s for sure. I could see that happen.
Yeah, I'll pull it up now. Louisville number 2 right now in offensive efficiency on KenPom. Illinois number 3. Kansas, another team that Tennessee could potentially see. Probably a little bit less likely to, but another good opponent.
Yeah,
potential opponent.
Yeah, yeah. And the one thing I will say about Kentucky is, well, they brought Lowe back. I thought Denzel Aberdeen looked really good, but they haven't done anything. Jaden Quaintance hasn't seen the floor yet, so I mean, you could argue that they're only going to get better. I just don't think they're going to shoot the ball as well as they did last year. They're going to keep trying to shoot, though. That's the way they play. But I think it'll be less of a threat from 3.
Yeah, I tend to agree. It's an interesting roster build, just being like a little bit different than what they typically do.
Yeah. By the way, that was Louisville's first win against a top 10 opponent since 2019. I mean, they've been in some down cycle for a little while. So it's good for college basketball that they're back in the mix like that.
Yeah, no doubt. And I'm trying to think, what was it, the COVID year? They got to number 1 briefly under Chris Mack. Like they quickly found anything. They made the tournament that year. But yeah, and that also leads me to another point I want to make, and we'll get to a couple of these other games later on. Been impressed with the ACC early this year. Not that they're the best conference or they're as good as the SEC or Big Ten, but I mean, they've just been a dead conference the last 3 years, and I think they're much improved over what they've been.
Yeah, it'll be fun to watch. Yeah, let's talk about one of those teams because Florida played in-state rival Florida State, and man, if this had been the past couple of years, Florida would have ran them off the floor, but Florida State was very game as an opponent here. They lost the game 78-76, but man, Luke Laux, yeah, he's got them playing well right off the bat, but it's tough to overcome those Gator bigs, man. Chinyalu, Howe, Condon, Hanlockton. They combined, Ryan, in that game against Florida State for 43 points, 41 rebounds, and 7 blocks. But it underscores what I think you might have said last week. The guard play is still a work in progress at Florida. It's going to have to get better.
Yeah, it is. It's, it kind of in some ways a little bit like Tennessee, just in the fact that front court gives them a very, very high floor for Florida. Like they're just going to be good because of how elite they are there. But
yeah,
if they're going to be a SEC championship Final Four national title contender to repeat all those things that they did a season ago, they guards are going to have to be way better. Boogie Flandon, Xavier Lee are going to have to be much better. And really, it just falls on them. Where last year, they had a wealth of guards. I mean,
right.
You can go to 4 deep to Denzel Aberdeen, who was huge in that SEC tournament game against Tennessee. Hit some really tough shots that felt like backbreakers when Tennessee was making a run, and probably played about as well as anybody for Kentucky the other night. So, Fland, like that was the knock on him at Arkansas last year. He was not very efficient in this game. 2 of 7 from 3, 5-11 from the field. Not terrible. And then Xavier Lee, who did battle some foul trouble at times and did some good things with assists, but 2 of 13 from the field, 1 of 10 from 3. So those guys need to be a lot better for Florida.
Yeah. We'll stay on guards for a second. A couple more games we want to talk about for a minute. We mentioned Illinois. Number 14, Illinois outlast number 11, Texas Tech, 81-77. Serious guard productivity for the Illini, right? Andre Stojakovic, Kylan Boswell, and then this freshman Keaton Wagler, who I hadn't even heard of, but he's made a real impression in Champaign. They combined for 56 points. What's weird, though, is so they were scoring points, and Stojakovic, man, I wish Tennessee could have gotten him. But Illinois only had 5 assists in that game, Ryan. 5 against 13 turnovers. So definitely some hero ball getting played in that one.
No doubt. And, Stojakovic, it felt like, I don't know if he had a single basket that was assisted on in the game, but
yeah.
I think he'd missed. I want to say he didn't play in their first game of the year, one of their first couple of games, but he was really good. Just his ability to kind of get to his spots on the floor, play off 2 feet, and score was super impressive. And he's obviously a bigger guard. I don't know what he's listed at, maybe 6'6", something like that. But I think he's only taken 4 threes in the 2 games he's played this year and scoring at a high rate. And then, yeah, that is the one thing I'd say with Illinois that I guess the one thing that doesn't feel sustainable, one thing they will get back. I don't think Kylan Boswell, he shot the ball from 3 really well in that game. He shot it really well from 3
right
so far this season. And he's certainly a good player, especially defensively, I think is a little bit of the glue for them. But he's not going to, we have a large enough sample size. He's not a great 3-point shooter. And then the other thing, arguably Illinois' best player and Tomislav, he doesn't play in this game. So, they had Big Z, but they didn't have his 1 inch shorter to 7'1" brother. The short brother. He was out. So that again, impressive. To be able to get it done without one of their top guys.
Yeah. Texas Tech, typical JT Toppin game. That guy's a stud, 35-11. Weird game though, man. Just we talked about only 5 assists for Illinois. Not many fouls on Illinois either. The Red Raiders only got to the line 4 times in this game, and they got outscored 16-3 by Illinois, which is really, you could say that's the difference in the game right there. So Illinois is going to be a tough one when we see them in Nashville here in a couple of weeks, no doubt. Now, speaking of a Big Ten team and then also an ACC team, you were just talking about how you think the ACC is kind of on a come up. If you look at this game, I would totally agree. Wake Forest, Steve Forbes, they had the game of the night against number 6 Michigan. Now, Michigan won this one in overtime, but, man, they had to weather a storm from Wake Forest. They had a 13-point lead going into the second half. Wake was feisty. Man, we just talked about the size of Florida a few minutes ago. That Michigan front line, my God, man. Morris Johnson, Luxembourg. Did I get that right?
Lindenborg.
And then, Yaxel, that's where I thought of the X. And then Ade Mara, who last year when Tennessee played them in the tournament, the UCLA people said he is not really that well conditioned. He can't play a full game. He played like 30-plus minutes in this game and was fantastic.
I remember because, they played Utah State, UCLA did in that first round game, and I remember the open locker room the next day. Like, that's what I wanted to talk to Tennessee's coaches about. I'm like, this Adamar guy, like, he seems way better than his numbers are and what he can do defensively. And, that would make sense if it was a conditioning thing. And if my recollection of the Tennessee UCLA game is right, he played well early in the game and then kind of tapered out as the game went on. So, that would make sense. But he was a guy that I came away from watching those 2 games in person at Rupp Arena last March, super impressed by, and he looked really, really good in this game. I don't have the box score in front of me, but I think a bunch of blocks in this game too. So he's getting it done on both ends of the court right now.
Here's his line: 18 points, 13 rebounds, 6 assists, and 5 blocks. I mean, that's
6 assists and 5 blocks. That's you throw that into the Sports Reference or something. You're probably not going to find too many of that combination in the last 15 years.
I got to admit, I mean, I loved it last year with Vlad Golden and Danny Wolf. I love the way Dusty May runs offense for Michigan. I think they're fun to watch. I just dread playing them, though, if the time comes, because they look good, man. They look really good.
Yeah, and then just pulling up their KenPom page now, I felt like turnovers were really their downfall last year, and just 15% turnover rate right now. So way down there this year, which feels key for them.
Yep. We're not going to dig too deep into this game. It was two ranked teams. I thought it'd be a better game than it was, but number 19 Gonzaga, they were playing at home. They crushed number 23 Creighton 93-60. It was close in the first half, but then the Zags just blew it open. And I guess you can just kind of set your watch to Gonzaga always having a pretty strong team each year. I mean, they look, I don't know any of the players besides Graham Ike, but they look good again.
Yeah, I feel like they bounced back from maybe a slightly disappointing last year. Not that they were, they were still good, obviously, but when they ended up being an 8 seed, when they maybe a 9 seed when they just destroyed Georgia. It's 27. It's like a Georgia. I don't even know if Gonzaga has a football team, but it'd have been like what Georgia Gonzaga football score would have been at the end of the first quarter. To start that game. But yeah, no, I watched a little bit of that game, and I watched a little bit of Gonzaga against Oklahoma on Saturday night too. Which when I was able to take my eyes off of how horrible the suit that Porter Moser was wearing was Braden Huff is the other Gonzaga player to go along with Graham Ike. I mean, we talked a lot bit about the backcourts of Alabama and Houston without having watched just an overwhelming amount. I'd imagine that combination's probably up there with the Floridas and the Tennessees and the Houstons of the world as one of the best front courts.
Yeah. And then again, in the last couple of nights, all the heavy hitters were playing. Number 1, Houston, number 4, Duke, number 5, Arizona, number 7, BYU, and number 18, North Carolina, who's rising quickly. They all had easy wins in their games. And I think that's a good segue to the last topic we'll discuss today. And that's regarding these freshmen. I mentioned this at the beginning of the show. Those last 4 schools I just mentioned, I was going to say excluding Houston, but they also have Chris Senack, who's pretty strong himself. But Duke, Arizona, BYU, and Carolina, they're led by elite level freshmen. And I know we've been talking about this often, but what's crazy is how this class keeps each week, Ryan, it's growing bigger and bigger. We talk Boozer, Peterson, DeBonta, sure, Koa Pete, even our own Nate Ament. They're all household names, but now you have to include Caleb Wilson is starting to, I wouldn't just say emerge. He's right up there in that conversation. Michael Brown, we talked about. The guys at Arkansas, Acuff and Malik Thomas. And now there's these unknowns. A lot of them are on the West Coast. This point guard, Abuka Okori from Stanford. Then the international guys, Hans Steinbach from Washington, a big German dude. And then this kid from Virginia Tech, too. He's Greek. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name properly, but it's spelled like Neoklis, or maybe it's Nicholas Avdalis, who to me casts some serious in shape Luka Doncic vibes the way he plays. I mean, that's like 12 top tier freshmen, and there's probably even more, honestly, that I haven't even named. So my question to you, Ryan, is there one of these guys that's really just grabbing you besides some of the usual suspects that we'll call them? And then also, is this just like one of these generational cycles? There's a lot of people saying this might be the best freshman class ever, or are there other reasons contributing to this, like the influx? Again, we've got some European guys in this mix as well. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'll start on the maybe under the radar guys, and I laugh while saying that because the first one I don't really know he's under radar. He's a top 10 recruit, but Caleb Wilson, he doesn't seem to get mentioned in that top group, and I thought he was just stellar against Kansas. I think what just impressed me, or I enjoyed watching as a basketball fan, was how hard he played. He just had an absolutely relentless motor in that game, diving on the floor for loose balls, just nothing that is just unbelievable, but you don't always know if you're going to get that with 5-star. What I didn't expect, when I kind of wondered, it's just a lot more polished offensively. His ability to score in the mid-range, to get to the basket. To me, he felt like, try to say this diplomatically, a little bit of like a Rick Barnes 5-star freshman, like a Keon Johnson type guy who's just a really good athlete and not very polished offensively. He's way more polished than I thought. And then the other one that I don't think anybody's really mentioned is the Kingston Flemings kid at Houston, who Houston hasn't played a very hard schedule. They'll play at Auburn I think it's that game's in Birmingham actually, but they had East to play Auburn on Sunday, but he's averaging like 15, 16 points a game. Is one of their leading scorers so far. It was like a low 5-star. So he's another one that I'm excited to watch on Sunday. But his numbers have stood out to me that I feel like no one's really talking about. And I think it's a combination as to why we're seeing it. I do think, at least at the top, this is, a generational type class, or the best we've seen it in a long, long time. And I think that's, kind of what maybe been undersold is the depth of it. And I think when we talk about the depth of it, to me, it's look, you lost 2 senior classes last year. You finally had all the COVID guys cycle out. So that just has created more opportunity for for more players. It has lessened the grown man aspect. There's less, I guess, 22, 23-year-olds playing in college basketball, 24-year-olds, and there's been, but to your point, you still probably have some of those guys that are listed as freshmen that are maybe 20-year-old freshmen from the overseas market. So I think it's probably a combination of a lot of those different things, but certainly just a freshman class from a high-level talent standpoint that we haven't seen in a number of years.
Yeah, there's no doubt, and there was one that while you were talking that it came into my mind, and of course now I've lost it, so I can't remember who it was. But I mean, it's just there's just so many at this point, and I love it. I absolutely love it. What's crazy is, we've got Nate, and I love Nate, and we're thrilled to have Nate. But he's probably right now, he's kind of like middle of the pack with all these other kids, because I think a lot of people were like, oh my God, we might have the top pick in the next NBA draft. I don't think so. That's not a dismissal of anything tied to Nate Ahmed. It's just how good this class is.
No doubt. And, it'll be something will be interesting just to see. He hasn't had that chance to play high level competition, and certainly really his first true high level competition, because Rutgers isn't very good, will be an extremely difficult task in Houston.
Yeah.
But no, you're right. And the other thing that I couldn't help but thinking is it's kind of crazy that in this year, it's like Kentucky doesn't really have any of these guys. Like, I know the Moreno kid, the big man, has played some serious minutes for him, but it feels weird to be talking about this good of a freshman class and this many elite guys, and Kentucky doesn't have one that's going to be a first-round pick or anything like that.
Here's the other one I was going to hit you with. I think he's going to be fun to watch, and we're going to see him in conference. I'm not sure he fits in this top tier that we're talking about, but do you see Dominique Wilkins' kid? Any highlights of him, Jacob Wilkins?
No, I haven't seen any.
He is a freak, just like his dad, man. But he also has a three. I saw him hit a few threes, but he was some electric dunks in transition and all that stuff. So he'll be one that is fun to watch. Again, I don't think he's in this conversation, but he's another true freshman coming in. And just, again, in other years, he might be getting talked about in that top 3 or 4 in other freshman classes, but not this one for sure. Not this one at all.
Georgia will be, they've played nobody like Tennessee, but they've beaten the brakes off some teams, and they played Georgia Tech, who I think might be Boston College lost to someone horrible the other night, but Georgia Tech's going to be down there for worst team in the ACC. I think Georgia will absolutely annihilate them on Friday night, and it'll be interesting. Georgia's been better. Again, it's really early, and they haven't played much of anybody, but they've been better than I've expected at this point.
Yeah. Well, looking ahead, we've talked about big games, and you touched on at least one of them, but this weekend, holy crap. And it starts Thursday night. Number 2 Purdue at number 8 Bama. And that's the other thing I love, is some of these games are actually on home courts, not neutral sites. That one's in Tuscaloosa. And man, we're going to see some offense in that game. Got to tell you, between both teams. You got arguably best point guard in the country in Braden Smith. Alabama, we talked about them earlier. I'm going to be locked in on that one tonight.
Trey Kaufman-Wren's supposed to play tonight too, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. He is. So, and they've got this, now they got a 3-point shooter, this Jack Benter kid. I don't know if you saw him. He's like 6'5", 6'6", just an unassuming blonde-headed kid who can just bomb, man.
Yeah.
He got the start over with Kaufman-Wren being out in the last game. So that should be a fun game, because we know Bama will shoot threes.
Yep.
And then Friday night, classic old school Pac-10/Pac-12 game. Number 5 Arizona. They're going to meet UCLA, number 15 UCLA. It's not at Pauley Pavilion. It'll be at the Intuit Dome in Inglewood, which I get it. They'll have a big crowd there. I wish it was happening at Pauley, but when I lived in California way back when, Ryan, I mean, Arizona, UCLA was a war. I mean, back in the late 90s, I mean, that was great basketball back then.
It feels like it's, obviously I can't speak to what it was, but it's certainly renewed to a certain extent in the last couple of years, and glad that they're still playing this game, though even though not the same conference.
Yeah.
It is brutal because there's not really the Friday night slate's not that great, and it's brutal. This is a 10 or 10:30 Eastern time start.
Yeah.
It's brutal. Like, I'd be able to live with it if there was like a really good 8 o'clock game to lead us into it, but there's really not. I mean, there's a couple decent games, but
now that eats into my. I play basketball on Saturday mornings at like 7 a.m. So now I know I'm going to be up late because I got to watch that one. Saturday night. Of course, the Vols play New Mexico State, but I digress. Number 7, BYU goes to take on number 3, UConn in Boston. Something tells me BYU might get their comeuppance there. This would be a perfect. Danny Hurley is going to get his guys so spun up, and it should be fun to watch, though.
Yeah, it should be, and what really just about Connecticut's first big test of the season. So I saw he's already had had a quote earlier this week, maybe it was Wednesday, about him and Silas Demery to Georgia transfer having a contentious relationship or something like that, which which was funny.
Yeah, and I mean they've been without their, they brought in this kid from Central Indiana, Braylon Mullins, who very highly regarded, but he hasn't played because he's been hurt. So I don't think he's going to be ready for this game either. But that's another talented guy to keep an eye on eventually. And then the game you mentioned, number 1 Houston taking on Auburn in Birmingham. I don't know. I think Stephen Pearl, they're gonna get big boyed, I think, on Saturday. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, and Auburn's played better since the terrible opening game against Bethune-Cookman. But yeah, I'm with you. I expect Houston to roll, and hopefully this will go better for Auburn than the last time they were playing in Birmingham, which was Oklahoma State, who does look pretty good. I can't remember, did they beat somebody? They got a pretty nice win over the weekend. I can't remember who it was against, but
yeah, I can't recall.
Better than I expected, but obviously they won that exhibition game. Texas A&M, that's who it was. They rolled Texas A&M.
Oh, your guy Bucky.
They did, yeah. It was a tough look for Bucky Ball.
As for the Vols, they're off this weekend for basketball. Their next matchup comes up Monday night, kind of a weird time, 8:30, against Rice. And I guess that's probably going to be the toughest opponent they faced to date. I mean, at least they're, part of a Group of 5 conference and everything else. But that's coming up Monday night. But there's also the tie-in of it's a little bit of a reunion, right, for Rice and Tennessee.
Yeah, Rob Lanier, who was, I believe, associate head coach, or at least on Rick Barnes' staff, I want to say his first 4 years through the Grant and Admiral teams, and has bounced around Georgia State, then SMU, and then got fired at SMU for nothing on the court, really, just because they wanted a new coach when they went to the ACC, and now at Rice. So they played Oregon really close early in the season, I think in their first game, and then they lost somebody who, like a decent team, but not anyone that's great. So I think they're a few spots ahead of Mercer on KenPom, who Mercer's really shot up KenPom to start the season, but should be the most difficult of Tennessee's bye games this season.
Yeah. So we'll obviously be watching, but man, we're off and running, buddy. I appreciate you as always coming in and helping out with this. I love your perspective on it all too, and we will keep on trucking. As for the listener and the watcher, the viewer, as it were, thank you for doing that. We'll be back next week with another edition of the RTI Rim Runner. We'll, like we were just saying, recap the next set of Vols games, starting with that Monday night game. We'll also look ahead to the first significant matchups for the boys coming up in Vegas, as much as we can foretell it beyond the Houston game. And then, of course, we'll recap all these big matchups that we've just been talking about over the weekend, and there will be other games next week for sure. As a reminder, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button for the show if you're watching us on the Rocky Top Insider channel on YouTube. Download our podcast wherever you listen to your pods. We do appreciate all the support and following the show. Ryan, thank you again. Looking forward to doing this with you next week on the precipice of Feast Week, man.
Yeah, it's getting geared up and excited for more, high level games.
Yep. And here we go. We got it done in less than an hour. Good for us.
Yep, we're finding some decent efficiency. Could be
There
we're
we
not
go.
JP Estrella level of efficiency,
No.
but pretty efficient at this point.
No, we'll get there. We'll get there. All right, y'all. Again, thanks for watching and listening. Have a great week ahead, and we'll see you next time on the RTI Rim Runner.